Welcome to the Diverse Minds podcast, where we give you the tips, tools, and techniques you need to be a mentally healthy and inclusive leader. Each week, you'll hear about a variety of topics linked to mental health, wellbeing, and diversity that will enhance both your professional practice and personal wellbeing.
Welcome to the 282nd episode of the award-winning Diverse Minds podcast. And for June, this month's theme is all about loneliness in honor of Loneliness Awareness Week, which ran from the 9th to the 15th of June. Loneliness is a topic I hadn't covered, so I thought it'd be a really good opportunity to do so. Don't forget, the podcast is now fortnightly, but if you're missing weekly content, you have 5 years worth of podcasts to listen to. And if you want my handy guide that lists the episodes with a clickable link, you can get it at bit.ly/DMPG23. So this week, I wanted to focus on being the only one in the room. So what do I mean by this? I mean being the only female, global majority person, LGBTQ plus person, disabled person, parent, we could keep going, in a room where you're made to feel out of place and less than. We won't always find people who are exactly like us, who have the same identity facets, who've had the same lived experience. But I think here the issue is that how we can, all of us, be made to feel uncomfortable and isolated, left out, and like the only one, the lone voice, and someone who has to constantly put their head above the parapet and make it known that not everyone is part of the majority culture, whatever that is. And if you or your organization really care about equity, diversity, and inclusion, this is paramount. We can't have people feeling isolated in their workplaces, surrounded by groupthink. That's also not to say it's easy to get it perfect every time, but there is a lot that we can do to make it much better. And in the last episode, where I gave an overview of loneliness and particular focus on loneliness in the workplace, so if you missed it, do check out episode 281, we talked about the fact that loneliness can lead to increased stress, anxiety, and depression, impacting employees' mental and physical health. Of course, if we feel isolated, this is likely to lead to reduced productivity and job satisfaction. Then this can lead to increased absenteeism and turnover, mental ill health that could be short-term or long-term. And again, we don't want people to suffer, and I use that word really intentionally. It can have then a negative impact on team performance. So when someone feels lonely or isolated or like the only one, we're going to see a decrease in collaboration, innovation, and overall team effectiveness. And isolation can, of course, limit networking opportunities, reduce visibility. Someone wants to hide because they don't feel valued, and therefore hindered career advancement and incredibly negative impacts on their confidence and self-esteem. So I really hope you're enjoying the content of this podcast so far. And if you want to keep up to date, then why not join my newsletter? When you join my mailing list, you'll receive a free copy of my white paper on inclusive language and mental health. And that link is bit.ly/ILMHCK. So what can we do to change the status quo, or what are the situations in which people might feel isolated and be like the only one in the room? So I've come up with a list of a couple of things, and of course I think there are more, but for me the first one is pushing someone with a particular identity profile to be a spokesperson when they don't want to be, they haven't been nominated, and yes, they might be a pregnant member of staff, but they don't necessarily want to be a spokesperson on maternity leave or pregnancy experiences in the workplace. However, there might be people who do want to do that. So I would say it's about using the expertise. And what do I mean by this? If you want representation, do a call out for people, make sure there's a group of people who have a conversation with that particular characteristic, identity profile, and nominate a spokesperson. And that person then can gauge views safely from the rest of the group and feed it back to the particular committee, body, or talk about their own lived experience. So that's the difference between picking someone and go, oh, you look like X, brilliant, come and do this. Often people really don't want to do it. And some people do want to do it. So it's that balance. The other thing is when someone is representing a particular group, or they may not be, it might be that it's a team of project managers, and you have a project manager who identifies as lesbian, and you have a project manager who is visibly from a global majority, and they're in the room and they're talking about particular projects, and someone might say, oh, well, you're from the gay community, you're a lesbian, what do lesbians think about X? Sometimes it's acceptable to do that if someone says, I'm part of the LGBTQ plus staff group, and actually this is what we found. Or when I've done my work for this particular project, we've been consulting with LGBTQ plus groups, and actually what we found is that is different. Also, looking at the flip side of it, if someone says, well, actually, I'm from the gay community, the LGBTQ LGBTQ plus community. And what we've seen is, or what I experience is, and I know many of my colleagues or friends experience it too, then to get shut down. So I think the flip side of this is microaffirmations. Now, we talk a lot about microaggressions, so creating a hostile, degrading, unwelcoming environment for people, could be intentional or unintentional. Microaffirmation looks at really affirming someone's contribution and value. So it's about, appropriate eye contact, looking at them, listening, affirming their contribution, saying, thank you so much. That's really useful. Given that our colleague has shared this information, how are we going to integrate it into what we're doing? So as opposed to, yeah, okay, that's interesting, move on. And actually, I've had this happen many times. I was at a very senior meeting, and actually it was as the VC of a university, and they were showing particular stats around staff survey, and they'd definitely been doctored, as in they weren't the true representation. And there was a category that said Arab, and they said, oh, well, this must be for Muslim staff. And I put my hand up and I said, no, you get Arabs from all backgrounds. You get Christian Arabs. I don't think it's about religion. It's about the cultural or racial representation. And it was tumbleweed through the room, and everyone looked at me like I was insane. So that was definitely an example for me around isolation. And I just thought, you know what, I'm done here, because it was a board position. So that is an example. The other thing is tokenism. Oh, we need someone Black, we need someone gay, we need someone with a visible disability on this board. Now, we should absolutely be having representation at board meetings, committee meetings, project task groups, HR input to policy, but it does need to be done in an open and honest way, and inviting people and not mandating people or cherry picking people. Again, linking to the other points I've already made, like, oh, well, they fit the bill, let's just get them in. Or this particularly happens when there's photo shoots for maybe staff websites, brochures, prospectuses. This is quite a big deal. It happens in schools and universities. I think, we can send an open and honest mandate saying, we're going to be having a photo shoot for our prospectus. We would really like to represent our community. It would be great to showcase a variety of people. We'd love to invite you to take part if you're interested, as opposed to cherry picking people and being like, oh yeah, we really need a brown face. We really need a black face. This happens a lot, and people get very angry, rightly so, about it. So there is a difference. And actually, if no one comes forward, then we need to think about, well, what do we need to do differently? Thank you for the colleagues that have come forward for our prospectus photo shoot. We'd really like to understand particular people who were found the opportunity appealing, and those who didn't apply. If you want to give feedback, have a chat with X. So then if we don't get it right the first time, there's something we can do again. The other thing is gaslighting. So again, linking to shutting the person down. Someone says, well, actually, I don't think that's a good idea. I don't think this initiative is going to make a particular group feel included. Or, well, I think you're taking it the wrong way. We didn't mean it like that. This is a really great initiative. We've really tried to have lots of initiatives here. And so I'm laughing, not because it's funny, just because I think many of us will have heard that in lots of different contexts. But the antidote to that is to say, right, okay, that's really interesting. I'm going to sit in my discomfort, thinking of that in your head, and really listen to someone. You might not have the answer. You might have to say, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I don't know the solution. I don't know the answer. I'd really like to take some time to go away and think about it, process it, etc. The other thing that makes people feel lonely and isolated in the workplace, particularly around being the only one, being the lone voice, is groupthink and forcing assimilation. So, this is how we all think: assimilate or go. Oh, we really want someone disabled here, but actually we don't really, because this is really awkward. And if you can't handle the white paper, then you deal with it. But this is, again, the antidote to that is to be open to challenge and sitting in discomfort and going, okay, wow, I had no idea about that. And then finally, from my list, and I'd love to hear yours, is this kind of what I would call dominant saviorism. You might have heard the term white saviorism, but I'm thinking of it much more broadly. So if we're from any dominant group, and of course we can all do that, is to think, I'm such a brilliant person, patting yourself on the back. We've invited these people to be part of something, but actually their full agency isn't in action. So, and also that the opinions and the information that they share with you, or being part of a collective, needs to be part of core strategy and professionalism, and giving people the space to speak. And if you want to know more about identifying white dominant norms, check out episode 234, all about identifying white dominant norms. Now, I don't think there's an organization who's really cracked the back of this where all people feel included. But as I said, there's a lot that can be done, because being the lone voice in a room is tough. It's isolating, it's excluding. Many of us have been there many different times. And if we can create positive environments in our workplace, it also needs to happen in community boardrooms, in religious spaces. This is really across the board. We all need to be thinking about this all the time. And when we feel part of a positive workplace community or any kind of community, our well-being increases. This area is often forgotten about. We're so inclusive, we're so wonderful. Look who we've invited to be part of this project team. But we've really got to ensure that we get it right because this is great for employee well-being. And while it's not about being perfect, there's really a lot that can be done. So as always, one of the things you might want to do is ask yourself questions around some of the things that I've talked about today. Creating this kind of environment where people don't feel like they're the only one and isolated is not only beneficial for individual employees, but also boosts morale, engagement, and retention across the organization. And if you're looking to foster a positive wellbeing culture and would like guidance on creating strategies tailored to your team's needs, Diverse Minds is here to support you. So please do reach out to me about training, consultancy, coaching services designed to build a healthy, happy, inclusive workplace. And you can email me at Layla, Leyla, at diverseminds.co.uk. So I really hope you've enjoyed today's show and the shows over the last 5 years. If so, why not leave me a review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast from. As always, you can leave me a note anonymously or with your name on SpeakPipe, and that is bit.ly/spkpdmp. And don't forget my TEDx talk. And we had a TEDx Wolverhampton reunion this last week, which was brilliant to see everyone. And if you want to watch that about the connection between race, culture, and mental health, it is bit.ly/TEDx Wolves, WOLVESLO. And on that point, I want to give a massive shout out to Claire Roberts-Malloy, who's just been given a TEDx license to run a summit. And the summit status is very, very high status indeed by TED.com. So a huge well done to her and the brilliant TEDx team. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Blue Sky. And the resources for today are Diverse Minds Identifying White Dominant Norms, episode 234, and 2 articles, one from GQ, who would have thought, from 2020 about what it's like to be the only Black person in the room, and an article from Refinery 29, I'm disabled and I refuse to be your inspiration. So do join me in July, where we'll, for the second half of the month, definitely be doing South Asian Heritage Month. So don't forget that kicks off on the 17th of July. And if you're looking for speakers, I have a few slots left. But until next month, everyone, enjoy the sunshine, take care, and I hope to catch up with you very soon.
Thanks for listening to the Diverse Minds podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you access your podcasts from. You can also connect with me on Facebook and LinkedIn. Tune into next week's episode of the podcast, where I'll bring you more insights on mental health and inclusion. Bye for now.